Okay, so this week I am going to talk about actually teaching your child how to read. I have found a video on the internet which gives a fairly good outline of it, but I want to expand on what she has to say, and I want to discuss a few of the details. So I'm going to include her link in the description below, and that way you'll be able to watch her video at the same time as you're watching my video, and you will get the full picture. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do in order to ensure that your children become good readers is to teach them to love books, reading, being read to, having stories told, enjoying informational books. A book that my son used to go to bed with at night instead of teddy bear, he went to bed with books, and this was his absolute favorite book when he was just about starting to learn to read. I did the reading. As you can see, it's very, very information rich. He is learning a lot of things just by listening to me reading to him. Okay, good books, these Usborne books. I'll leave a link to that below as well. Bedtime stories is one book chosen by the child, one book chosen by the parent. That way you can always keep expanding his repertoire of things that he is interested in reading. Children love the familiar, so they will always choose a book they have already read, and you can keep augmenting that power by ensuring that there is as many books as possible. Ideally, you have access to a library. Everybody's situation is different at the moment, but that is the perfect situation. We were sailing at the time, and I had over 300 books in one of our lockers. All kids' books, which I'd bought over the years. They'd had a thing on in New Zealand where the library sold off books at 25 cents. New Zealand, that was about 12 cents US at the time. So I went nuts. We just about sank the boat with the number of books that I had on board. Anyway, most people have access to libraries and online books, whatever you can find. Do what you have to do in order to ensure that your child is getting as much of a rich reading life as possible. Now we only start to teach reading itself. In the video, the other lady showed all the different sounds of the letters, but she did the whole alphabet in one go. I totally recommend that you do no more than 2 letters per day. And I would use the Montessori lesson format. The Montessori lesson is you show 2 contrasting items. So you do a U and a P. You put them together on the table and you say, this letter says A, this letter says P. Show me A. Show me P. And when that is done, tell me what this letter says. A. What does this letter say? P. And then that is the basic Montessori 3-part lesson. And that's an ideal way to teach 2 contrasting things at the same time. Do not do 2 very similar letters. Letters which often get confused are like B and D. They are basically the same letter except flipped. So your child will get confused very easily. Do contrasting letters every time. Okay, what I did, instead of using flashcards, I tried to make a game out of the lessons every day. There are a lot of resources on the internet of different games to play. One thing that I tried was puppets. I read somewhere that you can get your child to teach the puppet how to read. Didn't work with me because it became a huge game, and so I just let the puppet become a plaything, and it no longer functioned in our reading. A game which worked very well for me was egg carton. Wash them first, I put a raisin in each opening, broke it in half, put a raisin in each one of these, and then I took a Duplo block and I wrapped it in paper and wrote on each side the letter of the day. Place the Duplo block next to a hollow with one side up, and the child says that letter or word, depending on how far you are with the thing. And if they get it right, they get the raisin. Otherwise, you tell them what it is, and then they tell you what it is, and then they get the raisin. There's no punishment here. It's all rewards. Then the block gets flipped. It's a different letter, and we do it again. And we practice all the way up and then all the way down. So we practicing 4 different letters or words or whatever in each session. And we did very short lessons every day. I did a few minutes in the morning, few minutes after lunch, and then in the evening again. So we did 3 sessions a day, but it was only just a few minutes. So it was never heavy going. So this was a game which worked very, very well. It is basically flashcards, but it's a reward system, and it just doesn't appear as boring as flashcards, which, believe me, it gets pretty boring for the adult involved as well. Okay, next step. She had a wall chart, and the wall chart involved just a consonant and a vowel stuck together. I skipped that step entirely. I went from letters straight to small words, and then we made silly sentences. You basically make up sentences with what you have available. If they know only 4 letters, then we make up words with those 4 letters, and then we make a sentence with that. And the silly sentences is the way to go. Ideally, you want to make tiny little flashcards. I used a cornflakes box. You can use proper white cardboard if you've got access to it. That will work much better. It's better to use cardboard and not paper, because paper, children can't move with their fingers. So a thicker cardboard is easier for them to manipulate. And so you can make up words, and then they can decode them as you go along. Okay, talking about decoding. She talks about blending straight away. Blending is an issue with some kids. What I did was we did every word in 3 stages. First, you decode it. Ka-et. Then you smush it. Cat. Then you say it. Cat. That way, you run your fingers under the letters as you go. And you keep doing that over and over and over again, and the child will get to the point where they can say cat, cat. The smushing can be an issue sometimes. So that is something you need to smooth out. One of the reasons why the sight word method became popular in the first place is that when children first start to read, they have no intrinsic motivation. It is all uphill. It is all hard work. There is no way to get from point A to point B easily. So you want to transition them as fast as possible. So when you are using the flashcard technique, something that I would do is I wouldn't do the entire alphabet as a set of flashcards. I built on things so that we were only learning 1 or 2 letters per day. And we only learned those letters on specific days. When I made my memory video, I made a mistake in that I put the most important information at the end of the video. And I don't think a lot of people got to see it. Right at the end of the video, I tell you the memory loss curve. And it's important to understand that concept before you teach reading, because if you are memorizing things, especially things which make no sense, like letters make no sense, words make a bit more sense, silly sentences make a lot of sense. You want to motivate your child, so you want to get into sentences as fast as possible. On the other hand, you don't want to teach them to guess at words. They must never guess. You don't want to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over again. You want to be strategic about it. So you teach a subject, and I used to do the 3 lessons per day. That way we did the same thing 3 times in one day, and then the next day we reviewed what we did the day before, and we learned a new lesson. And then I would bring in the older material in the correct number of days. Once you are up and running and you're learning a few odd words here and there, and you are making them into little silly sentences and learning the sentence as we go along, you want to go to the internet and download the Dolch list of sight words. Most of these sight words are decodable with phonics. And what is decodable with phonics, you want to pick out and use as part of your lessons. If there are things which take a little bit more effort, you want to separate them and do them 1 per day. Once you have done most of the phonic lessons, go on the internet and find the Dolch sight word list. Most of those words can be done with phonics. The reason why the list exists is that those are the words which make up the bulk of early reading. I think they took newspapers and other reasonably easily understood reading material, and they found the most common words. Those are the words on the Dolch reading list. They made it into a sight word list. Most of them can be phonically figured out. And as and when you come to words that can be done with the lessons that you've already taught, you include those words in your silly sentences as soon as possible, because those are the main words in English. Another thing I want to mention, you will notice when you see her arrangement, is that she has no pictures, no images. This is something which is important. Your child will read the pictures if you include a picture on a flashcard or whatever. They will look at the zebra and they will say Z. They are not looking at the letter Z. They're looking at the picture zebra. So be very careful with that. Only as simple and as plain, as undetailed as possible. No extraneous clues. They must look at the letter in order to say the letter. Okay, now you have taught your child to read. He has started on the Bob books. I totally recommend them. They are excellent. I will make a link below for that as well. They are the best very early readers that I know of. I will also link the Starfall, because that's online and it's accessible to everybody who can watch this video. Once your child is reading, and they're reading they've gone through all the Bob books and they're starting to read very simple library books. Practice, practice, practice. Get your child to read a little bit every single day, up until the time that they are fluent and managing to read on their own. But don't stop reading to them. We come to the next phase in the whole process. And the next phase is reading comprehension, which the American school system teaches as a separate subject, which is really weird. Reading comprehension is made up of 2 different things. One is decoding words, the ability to figure out what a word says, and the ability to understand what that word says. So, the way to ensure that your child's reading comprehension is up to the mark is by reading books. Lots and lots and lots of books. You want to find things which interest your child, but you also want to expand on it. You want to give them as broad a background as possible. And once they understand what's going on and understand the concepts, they will have no problem with reading comprehension because they understand what the words mean. Okay, when do you stop reading to your child? You stop reading to them when you run out of excuses for reading to them. When they are little, it's cuddle time. And it's important to associate books with enjoying time cuddling with mommy. It's very important to make it a pleasure thing. That way, they will learn to love reading and read on their own after they are able to do so. The thing is, children can understand way more than they are able to read for a very long time. So you are their source of information. If they are forced to only get their information from books that they can read themselves, they will be lagging behind. Decouple all these things. Make sure that no skill is left behind because of another skill. If they cannot read at a level and they're not interested to read at a level where they are gaining information, you read to them. This was a thing with my son's penmanship. He never got there with penmanship. But he is an excellent storyteller. So I was his scribe. And until such time as he learned to type at a reasonable speed, and then he was able to write his own stories on the computer. Okay, once you have taught your child to read, the next thing is that you need to go into spelling. And I recommend this series. The reason why I recommend this series is, if you'll look at it, these are word families. The list for the week is all word families. The idea is that you don't want your child to fail. You teach a family in a week, and they will get almost everything right because you have deliberately taught them those words that week, and then they can understand them and write them. They do the homophones so that you are learning the odd spellings of words which sound the same but are spelled different at the same time. Excellent spelling curriculum, this. And once you have finished phonics as reading, you go straight into phonics for spelling, because then you're reinforcing your reading, you're using the one skill to piggyback into the next skill. Okay, I think that's enough for today. This is going to be quite a long video, and I will link the other lady's video down below so that you've got a full idea of how to teach reading between the two videos. Okay, thank you. Bye.